How do the gibbons end up here with us? In the beginning, our dedicated staff would travel around the country rescuing gibbons from the illegal pet trade as well as the wildlife tourism industry. Today, because we are at maximum capacity at our center here at Bang Pei Waterfall, that's simply not the case anymore. Currently, we run on an intake basis with the government when we bring in new gibbons into the center as space becomes available when we release families out into the forest. Once an individual comes to the center, they enter into a 3-month minimum intensive quarantine period. Here, they undergo a thorough comprehensive health check to ensure that there's no injuries to their body, as well as that they are not carrying any human diseases such as the herpes simplex virus, hepatitis B, tuberculosis, or rabies. The initial health check runs about 10,000 baht per individual. While this is costly, it is essential to ensure that we are introducing healthy gibbons into the rehabilitation project. Once given a clean bill of health, juveniles are entered into the project where they're paired or introduced to socialize with other similar aged individuals. Here, they're given the opportunity to observe and watch and learn how to socialize and essentially be a gibbon if they've only known a life of how to interact with humans. If they have been kept by humans most of their lives, socialization can definitely be a challenge, and it does take some time to introduce them into the group. In the case of personal family pets, most have been kept in very small enclosures, and they don't know a life of having a little bit more living space to swing around and live. In any of these given scenarios, it can take up to 6 years to successfully introduce an individual into a group here at the Rehabilitation Center. In some cases, they can just never learn how to truly be a gibbon, and those are the difficult decisions the center faces on whether they will be candidates to be introduced into the reintroduction groups later on during their time at the project. Once an individual reaches sexual maturity around 6 to 8 years of age, they begin the matchmaking process. Through careful behavioral observation, the staff here at the project make decisions on which males and females may be better suited to living side by side. Once the decision has been made about a male and female partnering, the first step is to put them in cages that are side by side with a tunnel attachment between the two cages. Initially, there's a door that's closed between the two cages, but both gibbons can approach the door and be able to see and smell each other, but not actually reach out to one another in close contact. Eventually, through careful observation, if the project is noticing that they're beginning to exhibit grooming behavior or they're starting to make calls and sing together, then the decision will be made to slowly start to introduce them to one another by opening the door of the tunnel between the two cages. More often than not, it doesn't work with the first pairing. Gibbons, being monogamous, can be slightly picky when it comes to choosing a mate that they think that might work for them, much like humans. So it does take several opportunities for gibbons to meet with different individuals in order to make a decision of which one is best suited to their needs. The project has records of up to or more than 5 pairings before a successful pairing was achieved in order for the pair to decide to mate. As a result, the bonding process can be relatively quick or it can take a relatively long time. Finally, when a gibbon family has been determined to be ready for reintroduction into forest, they're moved farther up into the forest away from the other gibbons and the people at the center in order to start establishing a sense of isolation from human contact. This is where the unsung heroes of the Gibbon Rehabilitation Project truly shine. Our rangers spend countless hours in the forest of Koh Phraya non-hunting area, surveying areas to ensure that they will be successful sites for gibbon families to be released. This involves surveys on fruiting trees, as well as the patterns of the fruiting trees to ensure that there's fruit throughout the year, in addition to leafy trees that can also be a supplement to their diet. Another consideration to be taken into mind is also that there's an escape route for the gibbons if another family were to enter into their territory. This means edges of the non-hunting area are likely a not ideal space to put a gibbon family because there would be no escape route beyond where the forest ends. The first step of the reintroduction process, once the surveyed area has been deemed appropriate for a family, is the family is transported into the area and they're introduced to a training enclosure where they will spend the next 3 months together as a family. This allows them to be isolated in the forest area that they will soon call home, but also still provides that sense of security that they've come to know in terms of being within an enclosure for most of their life. While they're in that enclosure, it enables them to hear gibbon families around the surrounding areas. It allows them to access the sights and the smells of the forest that they soon will call home. During that time in the enclosure, they are still being provided daily food rations by the Gibbon Rehabilitation Project staff, who spend pretty much 24 hours a day, 7 days a week with the family. Next, once the family has become comfortable with the sights, sounds, and smells of their new forest home, the cage door is finally opened. This allows the gibbons to swing out into the natural trees, and as is to be expected, they might be a little bit uncomfortable and insecure with this new home, generally finding that the gibbons will stay nearby the enclosure for the first few months of their time as they become to acclimate in their forest home. During this time, food remains being provided by the Gibbon Rehabilitation Project, but slowly the food rations begin to decrease, thus providing a chance for the gibbons to begin relying on the forest around them to forage for their food. They also will put their forest feeding platforms farther away from the cage in order to encourage the gibbons to explore their territory in more depth. While every family is different, generally within 2 years, the gibbon families are confident and capable enough to be in that forest home independently as wild gibbons without relying on humans for assistance in their survival. While we hope that all of our releases will be successful, this isn't always necessarily the case. Bo, one of our current permanent residents at the center, had his chance to be a wild gibbon. He was bonded, they created a family, they were released successfully into the forest, but eventually, as the rangers would come and monitor and check on the family to ensure they were still successful as a family unit, Bo would continually, like a little puppy, follow the rangers back to the center, knowing that he would be able to access the comfort and security and safety and food of the center of which they provided. After many attempts to continue to try to rehabilitate him to stay wild, Bo was just had to make the difficult decision to keep him here at the center, as he just was not ready or willing to take on the wildlife that was meant for him.